Hi, I'm Jurassic Mark, and I haven't made a video in a really long time. So, in July of 2024, I made a video about a book series called Dinosaur Cove, the greatest book series ever made. The thing is, in that video, I only talked about 12 books, and there are 13 more, and I've spent the past year and a half knowing that I would have to make this video at some point, and now I'm doing that. If you'd like to watch that video, I have it linked down below, but if you don't have time for that, or if you can't stand to look at me for another second, I will give you a recap right now. Alright, I don't think I'm 100% in frame, but it doesn't much matter. So, Jamie and his best friend Tom live on a beach in Dinosaur Cove, which is the name of the book. They discovered a magical cave that brings them back to dinosaur times. Whenever they travel there, they have a dinosaur companion named Wana, who's a Wenontosaurus. Wenontosaurus is a Chinese dinosaur, but they live in England. It doesn't make much sense, but that's fine. The time period Jamie and Tom travel back to is determined by which fossil they're carrying, either a Permian trilobite, a Triassic, Jurassic, or Cretaceous ammonite, or a mammoth tooth for the Ice Age. Finally, in part 1 I mentioned that there were 3 things I remembered from these books. Those were Grandpa's dangerous cheese and pickle sandwiches, pasta that someone was pretending was grubs, and someone losing a tooth in dinosaur times and then someone discovering it in the modern day via paleontology. Grandpa's cheese and pickle sandwiches did come up, but the other 2 have yet to appear, so we will find out together whether or not that actually happened. If you got all that, we can now begin in 2026 with Dinosaur Cove Book 13. Right now. For the first time, Jamie and Tom decide to travel to the Triassic period. They see a big swarm of flies and something called an Eoraptor, but they can't find Wana. Ah, there he is. The boys find Wana, but, and you'll have to excuse my language, but this is quite literally how they're described in the book, a bunch of honking mounds begin coming toward the boys. One of them emerges from the surface and it's a Lystrosaurus, which is not a dinosaur, therefore contradicting the title and turning this from the best book series ever made into the worst book series ever made. The Lystrosaurus steals Jamie's bag, which contains the ammonite, which is their only way to get home. Jamie decides to lower a ginkgo fruit down into one of the holes, which brings the Lystrosaurus out, but it doesn't have the backpack. Jamie goes down into a Lystrosaurus hole, and he finds a Lystrosaurus sleeping on his backpack. Luckily, Wana followed him down, and he headbutts the Lystrosaurus. It runs away, Jamie gets the ammonite back, and everyone goes home. This one opens with Jamie's dad telling him about Postosuchus, an apex predator from the Triassic period that was very dangerous and could run about twice the speed of a human being. Jamie's dad walks away and Jamie turns to Tom and is like, "Hey, you wanna go die?" So the two of them go back to the Triassic and they find a lake. They climb up an old tree and they see 2 Postosuchus in the water. Now, throughout the previous 12 books, there was a consistent theme that became a running joke in my video. Tom, Wana, and Jamie, but usually Jamie, always end up falling from something. This time around, Wana falls from a tree directly into the lake. The Postosuchus want to eat him, but they temporarily get distracted fighting each other. So, young Jamie Morgan, not but 8 years old, grabs a rope, swings across the lake, and grabs Wana. It's a Christmas miracle. In a more realistic turn of events, the vine breaks, causing Jamie and Wana to plummet into the water. I think I'm allowed to count that as Jamie falling from something. The Postosuchus charge for him, but he climbs out of the water, runs away with Tom, and everyone goes home. Jamie and Tom return to the Triassic period, even after having almost died last time around, although that is not necessarily uncommon. They run into Wana and also a herd of Plateosaurus, which I actually referenced last time around. It seems that Rex Stone finally realized that the Plateosaurus he made a joke about was actually a real dinosaur, unlike Rex Stone himself, who is not a real person. The Plateosaurus herd walks off, leaving a weak baby behind. Jamie and Tom take the baby and they begin crossing the Triassic desert with it, trying to find water. They do, and they also find some grubs, which the Plateosaurus eats. Unfortunately, a group of Procompsognathus appears. As Jamie and Tom run away, Jamie falls off of something, but I just don't feel like explaining that. Now that they're out of water, and they need water, Jamie and Tom head toward what they think is an oasis. And it is! The rest of the Plateosaurus herd is already there, and they are tearing the place apart. To save the oasis, Wana and the baby run away, and the rest of the Plateosaurus follow. Eventually, they break off and head towards something else. Everyone goes home, and Grandpa is making beef stew with dumplings, which he's pretending is grubs. Close enough. Jamie and Tom decide to go to Dino World at night, following the sound of some kind of prehistoric creature they think they might have seen a ghost. They stumble across a lake full of frogs, but the ghost reappears right behind them. The ghost is revealed to be a Coelophysis. To save the frogs from being eaten, Jamie and Tom lead the Coelophysis away before covering themselves in mud to hide from it. They begin walking north, but another creature appears out of the darkness. Luckily, it's just a Dimetrodon, which may sound like the crocodilian Postosuchus from earlier, but Jamie and Tom learn that Dimetrodon is actually a type of herbivorous Preondactylus. They follow it around until they find a cave, and everyone goes home. For the first time since Book 4, Book 17 is entirely focused on pterosaurs. Triassic pterosaurs, of course. I don't remember if they ever go somewhere other than the Triassic after Book 12. I'd hate for this whole video just to be Triassic content. This time around, the Triassic is super wet and foggy. A bunch of insects show up and they're quickly attacked by a pterosaur. A small one this time. It's called Preondactylus Buffarini, which is the longest name that ever appears in any of these books. It flees as the sun is blocked out. A violent storm starts and a flood begins forming. Jamie and Tom are almost killed again by water and rocks. They flee into a cave, but even as the rain stops, Juana is mercilessly attacked by a Preondactylus. Jamie blocks his attacks on Juana and it just leaves. Everyone goes home. Jamie and Tom return to the Triassic period, this time at dawn. They find a half-eaten Postosuchus carcass surrounded by multiple Eoraptors. The Eoraptors follow Juana away, and Jamie and Tom follow him, but Jamie falls into a crack in the ground. He's fine, but it's just ridiculous how often this happens. Oh, also a volcano is erupting. And Jamie and Tom have to climb up a mountain to escape an incoming tsunami. A lot of natural disasters today, I noticed. Jamie and Tom lead the Eoraptors to safety, but the tsunami completely destroys the mountain. The Eoraptors build a new nest, and everyone goes home. For the first time in this video, this book does not take place in the Triassic. However, this is also when I realized that they are never going back to the Jurassic or Cretaceous. Jamie and Tom want to go to the Permian era, but in order to do so, they need to use a trilobite, not an ammonite. In the Permian, they encounter a few Dimetrodon. The wind changes direction and the Dimetrodon begin chasing them. And this feels almost ridiculous to say, but by this point, I feel like they should have learned their lesson. They get away, of course, and now they stand from a distance watching two Dimetrodon fight. Interrupting the fight, an Anostron Sevia attacks them. The Dimetrodon manages to scare it off, but it ends up following Jamie and Tom. Juana climbs up onto their shoulders, they scare the Anostron Sevia away, and everyone goes home. In the Permian, Jamie and Tom meet up with Juana, but Juana panics as something big approaches them. A Varanops is running away from several Lycaenops. The Varanops escapes, but the Lycaenops turn on Jamie and Tom. Jamie realizes that the Lycaenops are too weak to hunt, so he decides to find them some food. In the woods, Jamie and Tom are attacked by a Sphenacodon, and they hide in a pile of boulders. They scare it off with walkie-talkie noise, and it uncovers a nest of lizards. Jamie leads the hungry Lycaenops to the lizards, and everyone goes home. Jamie and Tom return to the Permian era, and believe it or not, they fall into a hole. They get out just to be met with a Pareiasaurus. The Pareiasaurus is an herbivore, leaving it to be attacked by a carnivore, an Ankylosaurus. Of course, just like themselves, Jamie and Tom manage to make it fall into a hole. They lead the Pareiasaurus away, but it's too heavy to cross a mud river. I kinda zoned out for this part, but they make it some shoes, I guess. Once it gets across, they return to the hole where the Ankylosaurus is still trapped. Being exceptionally crafty today, Jamie and Tom make a ladder and pass it down into the hole. They run away before the Ankylosaurus can attack them, and everyone goes home. Jamie and Tom return to the Permian era, where the same Anostron Sevia from earlier is already waiting for them. They take off running for the forest, and Tom and Juana get separated from Jamie. Tom and Juana meet a giant Moschops, which they decide to follow. Meanwhile, Jamie runs into an Estemmenosuchus, which he somehow ends up on top of. Eventually, he is able to get off, and he decides to follow the Estemmenosuchus. The Moschops and Estemmenosuchus find each other, and they begin to fight, but Jamie and Tom stop them with the smell of Grandpa's pickles. Remember that? I remember that. Anyway, whatever, everyone goes home. Jamie and Tom go snorkeling in the Permian Ocean. Juana almost drowns, all while he's being circled by Permian sharks, Helicoprion. Jamie and Tom manage to distract them with some of Grandpa's cheese, which is at least adjacent to his pickles, but Juana begins to sink. Jamie, once again, not but 8 years old, swings on a vine, and this time it completely works with no problems. They climb out of the water cave, haul Juana after them, and everyone goes home. I remember this being my favorite one of these books, but I somehow managed to get the least amount of content out of it. For the first time, 24 books into this series, on the second to last book, there is finally a vague reference to Tom's family, and that he has a brother and a mom. Jamie and Tom arrive in the Permian, and the ground is actively exploding. On the fossil finder, Jamie finds out that this is the mass extinction. The Permian is coming to an end. Good riddance. As this is all happening, they begin to be attacked by a horde of giant cockroaches. They escape before being immediately attacked by giant dragonflies. Again, they get away, and Jamie falls into a hole and gets stuck in a spider web. He tries to cut himself free, but a giant spider begins crawling toward him. He cuts through the web, and as the world explodes around them, everyone goes home. Using a fossilized mammoth tooth, Jamie and Tom travel to the early post-Cretaceous Ice Age. In a final, perfect ending to Jamie falling from things, Jamie and Tom fall down an entire mountain. At the bottom, they run into a young woolly mammoth. It takes a liking to them, and they decide to help it return to its herd. On the way, they get hunted by... well, you know. One of those things. The book doesn't specify. Luckily, helpful as he is, Juana headbutts the thing away. Jamie and Tom follow Juana into a bush where they run into a boy. A dirty human boy. His name is Eatzoltz and his ankle is injured. Jamie and Tom help him up onto the mammoth, but after walking for a bit, a storm starts. Eatzoltz leads them to a cave where he starts a fire and Jamie braces his ankle. They finally have shelter and they're completely safe. Luckily, the woolly mammoth manages to collapse a bunch of snow over the cave, trapping the Smilodon inside. Jamie and Tom reunite the mammoth with its herd, Eatzoltz sees a fire in the distance, and, for the final time, everyone goes home. In conclusion, I think Dinosaur Cove has held up great. I loved it back then, and I still like it now, which was a welcome subversion from the slog that I thought making this video was going to be. Also, you will notice that the thing with the human tooth getting fossilized never happened. I don't know how I remembered that. It could have been from a different book series, but I specifically remember it being Tom's tooth, so maybe I just made it up. It seems that the number of videos I make per year is constantly decreasing, so just in case this is my last video, I wanted to end it properly with part 2 of Dinosaur Cove. Anyway guys, comment below if I should do a video about every My Weird School book next. There's 51 of them. They're about this kid Arlo, and he has these 2 friends, and I don't know their names, and there's these 2 girls, and I don't know their names either, and there's a bunch of teachers, and they're all crazy. One of them's got an owl. There's an alien. One of them makes like a broccoli burger at some point. I don't remember. And if this video gets 100,000 likes by the time I post it, I'll make a video about every single one of them. Alright? Bye.